yeah, hey, yeah, hey, yeah, 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 hey, 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 hey.
Single coverage, jump ball. The blitz is picked up. There's an open man. It's short throw, little bubble. Chris Ottman-Bell inside the 10. The Fitzer ran him over, but the ball got off, and it's intercepted again. Passes it a game, trying to thread it in, and he does. Kyle Green Clifford again has time, throws, and it is intercepted in the end zone by Jordan Howden.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Quincy Bell Sports, and today we're going to have a sort of playoff picture predictor sort of thing that I like to do. I have these blind resumes I can give you guys, and I think those are going to be pretty fun. And also at the end, we will have the Week 12 picks. If you don't want to hear this playoff predictor stuff, the timestamp for when the Week 12 picks start will be right here. You guys can just skip to that if you're only concerned with the Week 12 picks, since I know some of you guys I don't think some of you guys might be interested in this, but I would if I were you. So we need to review what happened last week in college football, cause junk hit the fan. I mean, the playoff was just flipped upside down, and it started with the 11 o'clock game, my time, Central Time, the best time zone, by the way. Central Time, 11 a.m., bright and early in the morning, when a lowly 17th ranked Minnesota team, Minnesota was completely disrespected by the playoff committee. And I'm like, you know what? That's okay. It doesn't really matter that they're 17. It'll be their chance to prove themselves when they host Penn State for the Governor's Bell, I think it was. I think that's the Big Ten trophy they play for. That's where they're going to have a big chance to prove themselves, since they hadn't really played anyone up to that point. If we look at Minnesota's schedule up to that point, it was not impressive. I mean, you could say some of the games that they won in convincing fashion. They beat South Dakota State, an FCS team, by 7. They needed double overtime to beat Fresno State. They beat Georgia Southern by 3. And then they beat Purdue by 7. And then they stomped Illinois, which, by the way, Illinois is winning record now, and they're going to a bowl game. Beat them 40-17. They stomped Nebraska 34-7. They beat Rutgers 42-7, and they beat Maryland 52-10. But I mean, Illinois, Nebraska, Rutgers, Maryland, those aren't very good teams. And plus, I mean, you beat an FCS team by 7, and you needed double overtime to beat Fresno State. I could maybe sort of see why Minnesota wasn't ranked that high. They end up having to host Penn State. Penn State was favored by, I think, 10. And I'm like, I think the Golden Gophers will give them a good run, but I still ended up picking Penn State to win that game. And in the first half, oh my God, Minnesota ran all over Penn State. Ran them off the field in the first half. Penn State did end up managing They ended up trying to manage some sort of comeback. The win probability was all the way up to 97%. With 8 minutes to go, Minnesota was up 31-19. Penn State stormed back. They got a fumble recovery earlier in the half. And Minnesota did themselves no favors towards the end of the game. The win probability was all the way up to 51% in Penn State's favor. But then an interception by Jordan Howden on 3rd and 24 ended up sealing the deal for the Golden Gophers, and they now are sitting pretty good when it comes to how high they'll jump. We'll talk about them in a second, because I think they could jump all the way up to maybe 3. I'll talk about that later. But the next important game that we're going to recap is LSU-Alabama. Now, obviously, we thought this was going to be a game of the century matchup, 1 versus 2. The committee had other plans, and they decided we are going to rank Ohio State number 1 because they're the most complete team. So, we had to settle for a matchup of 2 versus 3. Heavens, what a low-ranked matchup, 2 versus 3. Anyway, this was another one. No one was giving LSU a chance in this game. Everyone, I think Bama was favored by about, I saw some Vegas spread, had Bama by 12. But, you know, the president's there. I don't know why. I feel like he maybe has better things to do. But he was there. And I feel like you could just see LSU start the game with a bit of intensity. I mean, Bama, according to the Football Power Index, had a 73% chance to win. And LSU really took it to them in the first half. I mean, it all started with Bama was driving the first drive of the game. I think they got the kickoff. And on 3rd and 8, Tua is running, and he just drops the ball. Like, you have clear momentum, driving down to get a touchdown to start the game, and he just drops the ball. And LSU just completely, boom, took that. Momentum is now in their hands. They drive down the field and score. They then, Bama's punter. Ball slips right through his hands. LSU gets great field position. They tack on a field goal. Jalen Waddle then, dude, this man is a monster, leading the nation in punt return yardage. Gets ripped by the face mask, spun around, is still on his feet, takes 88 yards to the house. That gave Bama some momentum. LSU then responded with a touchdown of their own, and then Bama got a touchdown. So it was 19-13, I think, at one point. And with 48 seconds to go, this game just completely got flipped on its side. It was absolutely amazing. LSU ended up scoring, and then I can't really remember what happened, but LSU just completely turned it around at the start of the third quarter. I mean, they were just out as a team on a mission. They were up 33-13, but Bama did not go down without a fight. They scored 21 fourth quarter points, made this game close at the end, but they just couldn't keep up with LSU's offense. It was just those early mistakes that cost Bama. I don't know what it is with their special teams. Their special teams has been just awful year in and year out. They don't have a kicker. Their kicker is always awful. It's just stupid special teams errors. Like in the national championship, tried to fake a field goal. That didn't end up working. So it's just been special teams mistakes for Alabama that I think have cost them some big games. Other games around the country, Ohio State beat the bejesus out of Maryland 73-14, even without Chase Young. Clemson wiped the floor with NC State 55-10. I thought maybe that'd be close. Missouri, they got whooped by Georgia. Ooh, coming down to Norman, Oklahoma. Iowa State had to come down, and they were down like 42. We could take a look at Gamecast on this one, I guess. They were down, what was it? They were down a bunch, I know. Like, Ohio State, they were down 42-28 with 9 minutes to, or no. They were down 42-21 at the start of the fourth quarter. And they forced a furious comeback, ended up not quite tying the game. They get a touchdown to cut it to 1. They decided they were going to go for 2. Oklahoma just gets immediate heat. He had to rush a pass, and it was picked off. I mean, Oklahoma really isn't that good of a team. Their defense, everyone's saying it's improved this year. It's better. The defense is better. But when you give up 20 points in the fourth quarter to Iowa State at home, that doesn't look like an improved defense to me. Even if they do get in the playoff, I feel like they're just going to get smoked. And, I mean, I like Jalen Hurts. I feel like he's a good quarterback, but, I mean, against a team with a halfway decent defense, he's not going to be able to put up that many points. I don't think Oklahoma will make the playoff, and even if they do, they're probably going to get smoked again like they did last year to Alabama. Bama just got out to a hot start, and they just couldn't keep up at the end of that game. So, real red flags coming from Oklahoma. Florida whooped up on Vanderbilt. Baylor and TCU. This was a thriller. Came down to, I think, 3 overtimes. Because Baylor's kicker made a 51-yarder to make it 9-9 going into overtime. Baylor ended up getting a touchdown, and then TCU. Guy catches the ball at the line where the out of bounds ends. He sticks his hand down, and his feet land out of bounds, but they said since his hand landed first, that's just like having your foot down. This wouldn't work in the NFL, because what are you going to do? Catch it, put both your hands down, you're going to drop the ball. But where you only need one body part down in college, he was able to make that catch. But Baylor ended up pulling away in 3 overtimes. Wisconsin ended up beating Iowa. Notre Dame whooped up on Duke. Texas beat Kansas State on a last-second field goal. I picked Texas in that game. They're back being a mediocre team, I guess. Virginia Tech kind of upset Wake Forest at home. I don't think a lot of... I kind of saw that coming. Boise State held off in overtime to beat Wyoming, and SMU won a shootout, 59-51 over East Carolina. Sorry to all my East Carolina fans, 0-6 in the American Conference. I send my sincere condolences. But now what we'll do is we are going to talk about how the rankings could shift and how I think they can be, how the playoff committee can see these, and how maybe this will impact the playoff. Now, the rankings. Now, the rankings don't come out till tomorrow, the official playoff committee rankings. But the AP poll is out. I think the AP poll can give us a pretty good idea of sort of the outline that the playoff committee can be looking for, maybe. And here's what I think you need to do, okay? The playoff poll last week, we can see sort of how the committee is viewing certain teams. They have Ohio State number 1, which I don't get, but they've blown out pretty much all their opponents. They have LSU 2, who of the undefeated teams, they had the best, I think, wins. Alabama, I think, had the next best set of wins, followed by Penn State, Clemson, then Baylor, then Minnesota, when it came to strength of the opponents that they've beaten. I think, and don't get me wrong, you can make an argument for Minnesota to be as high as 4, possibly even as high as 3. Let me explain. I know people are going to say, you can't jump a team 14 spots. Don't look at it as a team jumping up 14 spots. You shouldn't use last week's poll when using this week's poll. You should just don't even look at last week's rankings. Like Minnesota, okay? Let's compare them to Clemson. Who has Clemson beaten? And another thing, it's not the 4 best teams. It's the 4 most deserving teams. I don't care what anyone says. Alabama is probably better than Minnesota. They're definitely better than Minnesota. But they have a loss. They're not deserving to be higher. Okay, Clemson has beaten Georgia Tech, Texas A&M, Syracuse, Charlotte, North Carolina by 1, Florida State, Louisville, Boston College, Wofford, and North Carolina State. None good teams. You can say the same about Minnesota, but they have a great win against Penn State. Obviously, Penn State's not an undefeated team anymore, so you're going to have to rank Minnesota above Penn State. You could rank them above Alabama. Alabama doesn't have a quality win. Let's see who Alabama's played. And here's one thing I have a problem with the newest AP poll. They have Alabama at 4. I don't necessarily agree with that. Alabama has beaten Duke, New Mexico State, South Carolina, Southern Miss, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Tennessee, and Arkansas. And then they lost to LSU. I think Bama is toast. They're done. No chance for them to make the playoff. Because let's look at all the teams below them. Okay, Georgia has a loss, but they'll still have a chance to win the SEC, which I think there's a good chance that they can beat LSU in the SEC championship, although I don't see it happening. Oregon has a loss, but I mean, they could still play for a conference championship. Utah, same boat as Oregon. Oklahoma has a loss. They could still play for a conference championship. Baylor's undefeated. The only way Alabama can make it into the playoff is, okay, let's say LSU wins the SEC, Ohio State wins the Big Ten, and Alabama wins the... They would probably need Minnesota to... Actually, no. They would need Alabama... No. They would need Ohio State to win the Big Ten. They would need... They would need either Oregon or Utah to win the Pac-12 with 2 losses, so they need Oregon to, say, lose to Oregon State and then win the Pac-12, which won't happen. They'd probably need, like, a 2-loss Big Ten champion, if possible. There's just too much stuff for Alabama to get in, and their resume just isn't strong that I think they're done. I think this will be the first year we do not see the Crimson Tide in the playoff. Because, I mean, they looked pretty bad against LSU. The score was pretty, but the game was not in terms of being a Bama fan, if you are a Bama fan. So, I think if you look at the rest of the teams, their most important game for the rest of the season, because I think there's, okay, Ohio State, LSU, I think Bama is done. I don't think there's a chance they make the playoff, rendering them eliminated. Penn State still has a chance. Clemson does, Georgia, Oregon, Utah. Oklahoma still has a chance. And Baylor still has a chance. And Minnesota. That's your 10 teams that still have a shot. I think the only teams that I think were eliminated was Alabama, because Penn State still has a chance. I'll talk about them in a second. But I think if we look at each team's chance to get into the playoff, Ohio State, they finished the season they have a game against Penn State. That's going to be their most important game, because the winner of that game goes to the Big Ten Championship. Because I think Penn State, I think Minnesota might have been kind of a trap game for them. Because, so Ohio State's remaining schedule, they play Rutgers, easy W there, and then they have Penn State and Michigan to end the season. Michigan, I guess, is also an important game that we can consider while making this. The winner of that Penn State-Ohio State game will go to the Big Ten Championship, unless the winner of that game loses another game, which that's just a whole other beast of its own. But because if Penn State wins, they'll both have the same record, but Penn State will hold the tiebreaker because they won the head-to-head. If Ohio State wins, they're going to have the better record regardless. They don't even need to worry about a tiebreaker. If Ohio State loses that game, I think they're done. I don't see in this playoff, I don't see a one-loss non-conference champion getting in. I don't think this is like the year Alabama got in without even playing in the conference championship, because they lost to Auburn. Georgia got in. It was Oklahoma and Clemson, but then you had like a 3-loss Washington win the Pac-12 or something. You had a 2-loss Ohio State win the Big Ten. I don't see any 2-loss teams winning their conference, unless maybe Virginia wins the ACC, but that's not going to happen. Clemson's just going to roll through that conference. No harm done. That's the only 2-loss champion I see. There's no other conference where you could see a 2-loss team winning. And I don't see Alabama getting in, and I don't see Ohio State getting in if they lose to Penn State. I mean, you could maybe make the argument that they deserve to, but I just don't see it happening. As for Minnesota, we'll talk about Minnesota in a bit. So Ohio State's most important game coming up is Penn State, and then they'll probably have to play Minnesota in the Big Ten Championship, which the way Minnesota played against Penn State, they looked damn good. Like, that team came to play. They play like that against Ohio State, which may or may not have Chase Young, because he took improper benefits from like a family member or something. I have no idea what happened there. Experts say he should be suspended for 2 games, but maybe more evidence releases in regards to that. It's not like hard cut he's suspended for 2 games. It's just a rough estimate. LSU, they're not... this is the only team where if LSU loses... so they're probably going to play Georgia in the conference championship. They don't play anyone else. LSU, they finish the season at Ole Miss, Arkansas, and Texas A&M at home. They'll roll through all 3 of those games. So, right now, LSU is 5-0 in conference. Georgia's 5-1. Presumably, both of those teams will meet in the conference championship. The winner of that game, a 0-loss LSU and a 1-loss Georgia, they're getting in. Whoever wins that game is getting in no matter what. If LSU were to lose that game, that's the only non-conference champion I see maybe getting into the playoff, because they have those really good wins. You can almost say LSU's a guarantee at this point, whether they win the SEC or they don't win the SEC. So, that's the only team I think is guaranteed to get into the playoff. If you're an LSU fan, you should be happy about where you're standing. Because even if like LSU finishes the season ranked number 1, they lose to Georgia, I can still see them getting in with all the quality wins they have. LSU, to me, has looked like the best team in the nation. That team is firing on all cylinders. We can look at Clemson. They're just going to roll through. They're not a guarantee because there's still a chance that they can lose. And if they do lose, they won't get in. I think if Clemson loses a game at all, they're out. But I can still... if they go on... they're not a guarantee since there's still a chance they'll lose. But with LSU, even if they do lose, they'll probably still get in. Alabama, we said, is toast. Georgia. Who does Georgia play the rest of the season? I think... do they have a tough game left? No, they play Auburn this upcoming week. Or, wait, the 16th. Yes, they play Auburn this upcoming week. They lose to Auburn, done. Well, unless they win the SEC with 2 losses, which I don't see happening. I don't see Georgia winning the SEC. I just don't think Georgia can beat LSU. I just don't think they have the firepower to hang with them. If they beat Auburn though, maybe they're gonna have to prove something to me against Auburn for me to pick LSU to lose to them. But if they lose to Auburn and they beat LSU, I think they belong in the playoff. If you win whoever wins the SEC is getting in. We have Oregon. Now, it's going to come down between Oregon and Utah who wins the Pac-12. Oregon lost to Auburn, but they've beaten Nevada, Montana, Stanford, Cal, Colorado, a good Washington team, Washington State, USC. They play Arizona this upcoming week, then they play Arizona State and Oregon State. I think they're going to get in, and the same goes for Utah. They don't play anyone the rest of the season. If you ask me who would win between Oregon and Utah, okay, here's the thing. Oregon's offense is amazing. They've put up, 77 points against Nevada. It's Nevada, though. 45 against Colorado, 35 against Washington, 37 and 56 against USC. If you go to Utah, on the other hand, it's the defense that's their strong suit, because they are probably one of the most dynamic defenses in the country. Only allowed 12 points, 70 points. They shut out Idaho State. Tough game against USC. They only allowed 13 to Washington State, 7 to Oregon State, only allowed 3 to Arizona State, and allowed 0 to Cal. They did give up 28 to Washington, but Washington's a good team. They score on defense. They will get a pick 6 or 2 here and there. If they can make plays on defense, I could see them beating Oregon. But I just don't think Justin Herbert makes those types of mistakes. I think Oregon is a lock for me to win the Pac-12. And I think they would get in over, Oklahoma. Because, here's the thing, you have to look at quality wins and how bad your loss is. Let's say Oklahoma wins out. They play Baylor this upcoming week. If they lose to Baylor, done. Not getting in. If they beat Baylor, though, they'll probably have to play Baylor again. But Oklahoma, they beat Houston, South Dakota, UCLA, Texas Tech, Kansas. Texas is, you can count Texas as a quality win. West Virginia, and they got their doors blown off by Kansas State. That's tough. That's really tough. I don't see them rebounding from a loss like that, even if they finish the Big 12 with 1 loss. I mean, they only have 1 quality win, and let's compare them to Oregon. Their quality win is Texas. I guess you could say Oregon's quality win is Washington. I think Texas is not as good as Washington. You could say that we'll say Texas and Washington are about even strength, I guess. But if you look at the losses, Oregon lost to a good Auburn team by 6 at a neutral site. Oklahoma got their doors blown off by Kansas State. Now, you might be thinking, they lost to Kansas State by 7, Oregon lost to Auburn by 6. How does that make sense? Kansas State was dominating in that game. I watched that game. Kansas State was dominating that game. Oklahoma just scored a bunch of points in garbage time just to make the score look prettier. So the committee's going to have to take that into consideration when comparing a 1-loss Oklahoma and a 1-loss, Oklahoma and Oregon. Florida has 2 losses, they're done. Auburn has 2 losses, they're done. Baylor. Let's look at Baylor. They're our last team here, and then we'll get to the picks. They beat Stephen F. Austin. They beat Texas San Antonio. They beat Rice by 8. And Rice is really bad. They beat Iowa State by 2. They beat Kansas State, so they have that, at least. They beat Texas Tech. They beat Oklahoma State. I think at Oklahoma State is their best win. Kind of beat them pretty convincingly on the road. They beat West Virginia by 3, and they needed triple overtime to beat a 4-4 TCU team. Baylor they do not strike me as a good team. I thought they were doing pretty good, and then they really, really had to fight and claw against TCU. People had the same thing about Baylor and Minnesota, about how, they haven't played anyone, but they both had their big tests coming up. Minnesota passed their big test. They wiped the floor with Penn State. It's Baylor's chance to prove themselves at home against Oklahoma. We'll talk about that game later. I'll give that my own preview. But here's the thing. For Baylor to get into the playoff, they're most likely going to have to beat Oklahoma twice. And I don't see that happening. They might beat them in Waco this week. At a neutral site Big 12 championship, I see Oklahoma rolling. But, I mean, there is a chance. And they also have to play Texas, too. So there's a chance they lose that as well. So that's the chance for Baylor to prove themselves to everyone. But now, I think without further ado, sorry, this has basically gone on too long. I mean, this is supposed to just be weekly picks, but I think this is a good bonus. Let me know if you want me to do this at the start of every college football video. I think this is good. I might try to reassess this every week based on what's happening. So now let's go to the games. We're actually going to... I know board today. Sorry, that takes me a while to do sometimes. What week is it? 12? Yes, week 12. We're going to go through every FBS game in week 12. So let me filter this to... It's only on the ranked teams. We're going to go to FBS 1A. We'll even do the little games. Eastern Michigan against an 0-9 Akron Zips team. I see Eastern Michigan rolling. Western Michigan and Ohio, we'll take Western Michigan. Miami of Ohio and Bowling Green, we'll take Miami of Ohio. Toledo, North Illinois, we'll take Toledo at home. Kent State, Buffalo, we'll take Buffalo. Pitt and North Carolina, I see Pitt rolling on to a win at home. It's going to be, I guess, colder. Man, it snowed everywhere today. It snowed a lot where I was. In Chicago, in the Chicagoland area. I see Pitt rolling on to a win there. I see Marshall. Louisiana Tech is 8-1. I think Tech beats Marshall on the road. I see San Diego State beating Fresno State. Michigan State, Michigan. Let's talk about this one. The rivalry game, Michigan State's my main rival. I am a Michigan State fan. This game could get ugly fast. I don't know if you guys know, the 28-3 lead with the Falcons. Michigan State blew a 28-3 lead to Illinois. That was pathetic. I watched the end of that game, and I couldn't comprehend what was going on. I didn't know what was happening. How do you blow a I mean, Michigan State, that locker room's just in chaos. D'Antoni's probably fired at the end of this year. I almost don't want Michigan State to make it to a bowl game just so they can realize that you can't have an offense that Michigan State's offense, pitiful, sad, awful. I almost don't want them to make a bowl game just so they can realize the offense is so bad so they can fire D'Antoni. Michigan big. At the big house, I think this game could get ugly fast. Although, this is Michigan State's entire season, pretty much. Yeah, they still could go to a bowl game. If they lose this game, they're 4-6, but then they end the season against Rutgers and Maryland. 2 easy wins there. So Michigan State's almost guaranteed to make a bowl game. It's a win-win, pretty much. Either we get either Michigan State gets our doors blown off, and they realize D'Antoni needs to be fired, and they fire him at the end of the season, or it's our entire season, and we beat Michigan. Win-win for Michigan State, if you ask me, but I think Michigan rolls in this game. Louisville, NC State, we'll take Louisville. Alabama, I feel like Mississippi State always holds Bama close, and I don't know how Bama players react to a loss. Bama's favored by 21. They might cover. Bama's angry. They'll cover. Penn State plays Indiana. Ooh, a ranked matchup. Indiana's actually 7-2. They've been playing very well as of late, but even after the loss, Penn State favored by 14 at home. I see Penn State winning. If they lose that game, they're done, unless they somehow win the... No, if they lose that game, they're not going to play in the Big Ten Championship. So if they lose that game, they're done. I feel like it might be a trap game. Looking ahead to Ohio State, and they might be in not a good state mentally. I do think they'll win, though. Ooh, my upset pick. I'm taking Missouri at home to beat the Florida Gators. I think Kelly Bryant and his electric legs can get Missouri a win at home. Missouri blew out Florida in Gainesville last year, and I think Missouri is a lot better team. Going on the road at Missouri, I see the Tigers getting a win here. Florida favored by 7.5. Not only will Missouri cover, I think they win outright in that one. That's my upset special. Wisconsin, Nebraska. Nebraska is terrible this year. I think that Wisconsin will win that. Oklahoma State and Kansas, I think that the Cowboys win that at home. VMI and Army, don't know about that. We'll take Army, I guess. Alabama State and Florida State. I think Florida State wins there. Texas Tech, TCU, I think that the Red Raiders win at home. Northwestern and UMass, a battle of two 1-8 teams. I think we'll take Northwestern because it's at Northwestern. Tulane, Temple, we'll take Temple at home. UAB, UTEP, we'll take UAB. A ranked matchup between Notre Dame and Navy. I'm taking Notre Dame, but don't be surprised if Navy wins. Remember how Army almost beat Michigan earlier in the year because they run the option, they keep the ball away? I think that Navy is better than Army, and we all know that. Michigan is better. Okay, so Navy's better than Army, but Notre Dame's better than Michigan. I don't know. I see Notre Dame winning it at home, although give me Navy to cover at 9.5. Idaho State, BYU, we'll take BYU. Texas State, Troy, who cares? We'll take Texas State. Arkansas State, Coastal Carolina, give me Coastal Carolina. UL Monroe, Georgia Southern, give me Georgia Southern. Ohio State and Rutgers, give me Ohio State 77-3. Clemson, Wake Forest, give me Clemson big at home. Wake Forest was 7-1, but they kind of didn't prove themselves against Virginia Tech. Got your doors blown off. Auburn and Georgia. This will be a good one. At Jordan-Hare Stadium, Auburn is eliminated from playoff contention, but they can maybe rebound to get a good bowl, like maybe the Sugar Bowl, possibly, if they win this game. At home against Georgia, Georgia has more to play for, but Auburn has nothing to lose in this game, basically. They'll throw everything they have at Georgia. At home, Georgia is favored by 3. I'm not sure about that. We'll see. What is the Football Power Index? Football Power Index has Auburn at 52% chance to win, but the line has Georgia favored by 3. I think Auburn wins at home. I like their chances here. I think that those fans are just electric. I think Georgia kind of has trouble. I don't know. I don't see Georgia winning this game. Georgia, they've impressed me in one game this year, and that was against Florida at a neutral site. And if we look at Georgia's schedule, okay, they beat Vanderbilt, Murray State, Arkansas State. They beat Notre Dame at home. Good win there, I guess. They beat Tennessee, lost to South Carolina. They have one good win in my eyes. That's Florida. You can maybe count Notre Dame as a good win, but Notre Dame really isn't that good. I'm sorry, Notre Dame fans, but your team really isn't that good. I think Auburn wins this at home. I think Bo Nix has himself a day. That'll be kind of his coming out party, if you ask me. And, at the end of these games, we're going to talk about the Heisman race. Because that's heating up. I have a clear favorite. I'll talk about him later. And I don't think it's close. West Virginia, Kansas State, we'll take Kansas State at home. Houston and Memphis, we'll take Memphis. Memphis has been rolling. They're probably the front runner when it comes to the one getting into the non-Power 5 team that gets to the New Year's Six Bowl. Central Michigan and Ball State, we'll take the Chippewas. Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, we'll take Virginia Tech. Iowa State, Texas, this will be an interesting one. I'll take Iowa State at home. They looked good against Oklahoma. Kentucky, Vanderbilt, give me Kentucky. A ranked matchup. Minnesota, Iowa. Now, Minnesota looked convincing. They looked real good in their win versus Penn State. I think this is their last test. They do play who is it? Who do they play? They play Wisconsin to end the year at home, although they looked really good at home against Penn State. I feel like they do way better at home, that being Minnesota. This is at Iowa, and I think Iowa will give them some trouble. But I think Minnesota wins. Iowa's actually favored on the line by 2.5. I think Minnesota wins, but I don't think they do it convincingly. I think they have to fight and struggle for this win. I do think they end up getting that win, but I don't think it will come easy. But I do see them winning. Duke and Syracuse will take Duke, I guess. Hawaii, UNLV will take Hawaii. Incarnate Word against an 0-9 New Mexico State team. I think Incarnate Word's an FCS team. New Mexico State, y'all get your first win in this game. Wyoming, Utah State. This is a good one. Because Wyoming took Boise State to overtime. And Utah State's a pretty good team in the Mountain West. Give me Wyoming. I'll take Washington State over Stanford. Does Rice get their first win at Middle Tennessee? No. I'll take Louisiana to beat South Alabama. will take Utse to beat Southern Mississippi. I think LSU rolls over Ole Miss. I think they cover. They're favored by 21. I say they cover. I think Cincinnati beats South Florida. I think Air Force beats Colorado State. Oklahoma and Baylor. I think Oklahoma wins big. I think that Baylor, I don't think they're that good of a team. I mean, they've struggled through almost every single game. And I just see Oklahoma winning big in this one. They're favored by 10. There's about a 75% chance they win according to the Football Power Index. I see Oklahoma winning this game convincingly. South Carolina, Texas A&M. We'll take Texas A&M. Arizona State, Oregon State. We'll take Oregon State at home. Appalachian State and Georgia State. Georgia State upset Tennessee. Appalachian State sitting at 8-1 after beating South Carolina. App State's just so good. I like them a lot. Give me App State. UCLA, Utah. We'll take Utah at home. I think Boise State beats New Mexico at home. Oregon, I think, rolls against Arizona at home. And then I think Cal will beat USC at home. So thank you guys for watching. Oh, Heisman race. Forgot about that. Joe Burrow better win the Heisman, and he better win it convincingly. I don't care about all you Chase Young fanboys out there. I'm sorry. He's not... Okay, I don't know if you guys know this, but the Heisman rule says the Heisman winner must be a quarterback, running back, or it was like multi-level threat, or like multi-dimensional threat, or whatever. The last defensive player... Who was the last defensive player? I think it was Charles Woodson. Because, like, he returned punts. He was just... I don't see Chase Young winning. And I don't see... There's no other quarterback better than Joe Burrow. He walked into Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and just took it to Alabama. That was his coming out party. And, you know, the tank for two in the NFL, it's starting to become blow for Burrow. That man is a dog. He is amazing, fun to watch. He's really good. I mean, I don't even know how to say it. But thank you guys for watching. This is a long video. I'm sorry. Props to you guys who stayed the entire way. Hope you guys had fun watching this, like, 40-minute video probably. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you like this sort of longer style video. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.